Welcome back. And so there's so much more to bring to bear besides what's happening in the international community, back home as well. National politics, national security, and of course, the intervention of the federal government amid the many challenges that Nigerians are going through. Either it's the pump price of petrol or inflation. Let's have this critical conversation, and joining us now is a man that wears many hats. Of course, is a governorship candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 election. Currently, he's an ADC chieftain. Mr. Gbadebo Rhodes-Vivour joins us virtually on the morning brief. Mr. Rhodes-Vivour, it's good to have you on the program.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Mr. President is currently on a state visit to the United Kingdom, the first in about 4 decades with a traditional colonial power. His visit is coming amid a lot of questions that, according to reports, may be brought to bear during the state visit by the Prime Minister. And we're wondering, how the President should answer, following what we consider to be the response back home. But of course, the handlers, are also positioning ahead of that visit. We've heard, about pushback on possible, criticisms, following disputes between oil companies and the government. From where you sit, how do you view how Mr. President should position himself, and the response of the federal government to the many challenges, especially national security, which we consider may come up during this visit?
Our president has spent quite a lot of time visiting and traveling outside the country, whilst our people are experiencing extreme hardship that is unprecedented. Now, even going to the topic you just discussed and the pains that Nigerians are having to deal with now in relation to higher petrol prices, higher diesel prices, I don't think Nigerians, this is really their priority right now. Him visiting and maybe adding some legitimacy and credibility to his position as president is good for him, is good for his optics, is good for his party. I don't know, and I don't see how it is entirely good for the Nigerian people, because this is not a visit that is just happening. I mean, this is a president that spends quite a lot of time outside the country. So I don't truly see the value for the Nigerian. For him, surely, okay.
All right, Mr. Vivour, let's come back home to the politics. Well, this visit is a scheduled visit, so let's be clear on that. And whether or not a scheduled visit can be disrupted by what had played out in Maiduguri depends on the priority of the president or the leadership of our country. You can comment on that as well. But let's come back to what has been the concern and increasing concern. Of course, the president said when this is happening in your favor, is a happy moment. I remember I was speaking with some leaders that visited him after the breaking of the fast, and he talked about the fact that he was in the opposition, he stayed put in the opposition. That time, whatever was done to him, he kept bearing, and now perhaps it's their time to enjoy what it looks like, the system playing in their favor. So we know that we have 31 governors already in the fold of the APC. We understand Bala Mohammed should be joining soon. He's the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum. PDP Governors Forum has just 2 members now, so if he leaves, it will just be Sheyi Makinde. Record high, I think the highest state governors of a political party has ever had was in 2007. That was PDP with 28 governors before it started dropping all the way down to the number it has. The APC had gone from 19 in the last election or so in totality to now 31 to maybe 32, a record high. Is it the fault of the APC that this is happening to the opposition? Okay, what do you think is really happening with the opposition? Because on one hand, the APC is saying we're not responsible for what is going on with you. But some members of the opposition are saying the APC is planting people to destabilize the parties so that Bola Tinubu, the president, will be the sole candidate. Which do you share?
Okay, so starting from your first point about security, and you talked about him traveling at that point or not traveling at that point. You know, I was listening to your report on Iran, and the fact that these people can be so sovereign, can be so strong, despite having been sanctioned for over 20 years, makes me feel very embarrassed to be a Nigerian. As a Nigerian, we have been colonized, we have been enslaved, yet there is no vision for our security. We can barely protect our own citizens. We need a foreign power to show an interest before our government sits up and starts tackling security or even making statements and showing empathy. The president visited at a point to Benue to pay condolence, but then he said, as the number one citizen, could not reach a particular point where his citizens, his constituents were hurt and were violated. And then you contrast that to a place that has been under sanctions for 20 years and see how organized, how structured they are. It really gives, I think it should give a lot of pause for thoughts to Nigerians to actually evaluate the quality of leadership they've had for the last 2 decades. Because if this were to happen to us, we're completely gone. That's one thought I wanted to share. The second thought was about the statements that this is their time to enjoy being in the ruling party, having been in opposition for quite some time. And then I think to myself, what was done to them? What was done to them? I went for a declaration. The police and thugs came to scatter it. Yesterday in Calabar, we had thugs go and scatter an ADC meeting saying that they don't want any other party in the state. We have AERTW saying that their boss is the president and they are going to deal with any opposition that is in the state. And this is going all across Nigeria, in Kaduna, in different places, in Port Harcourt, so much. And you look at how tolerant the PDP was of opposition. I've read and I see videos of himself, the president, talking and castigating the president at the time, Goodluck Jonathan. We had a very thriving democracy. You are not getting people picked up the way PDP was not picking up people that were part of the opposition. PDP allowed for a thriving opposition. It was not a do or die. It was not violent the way we saw in 2023. You know, so when he says things like that, again, another bit of propaganda that does not match the reality of political experience in Nigeria. You know, so that's my thoughts on that. And then this conversation about governors decamping. I have to say, first, I want to be hard on the governors because I imagine if governors had more spine, they would have made different decisions. I think about the kind of governors that put the APC together and how they were able to be successful. And it says a lot to the quality of governors we had then in terms of audacity and understanding their position as number one citizen for their constituents and their state, relative to the type of governors we have now. At the same time, what Governor Wike has done to the PDP is unforgivable. This is a legacy party that has been completely decimated and destroyed using the court of law. And anybody that wants to contest in an election cannot see the PDP as a platform that they can run their ambition on. It's not even just about decamping to the ruling party. It is decamping to Accord, as we saw in Osun State. Just for the fact that this party, the PDP, has become a very problematic platform due to the amount of cases that have been instituted in court and the meddling that we've seen with Governor Wike. And now you see this attempt at reconciliation when everybody has left the party. So I guess he can enjoy the party by himself. You know, it's very, very sad because this is a party that made him all the way from local government to governor to minister to all sorts, and to just see it destroyed like this, it's a lesson. It's a lesson for parties to look at and to understand the amount of power they give individuals, no matter how much money they give to the party to support. It's also a lesson for parties to look into greed and making decisions just based on money, because all these things are lessons that the PDP needs to take into consideration. And those are my thoughts on that.
And, you know, politics and politicking can sometimes feel like calculus to the people. I mean, at that level, at your level, a lot of people don't quite understand or not really interested in the politicking. All they want is the results, right? They don't want to see the equation and all of the, you know, solving. They just want the results in a manner of speaking, and that's why I'm using calculus. And right now, what the people are feeling the most, two things. There's a long list. But first is security. What played out in Borno State, Maiduguri, the capital yesterday, and the ripple effects. At least 23 people killed, over 100 people injured, 3 coordinated suicide attacks in 2026, March. Right, this is not pre-2015. And we've had previous suicide attacks in Borno State. We had in December and all of that. And there are other states still experiencing either kidnapping, killings, attacks by bandits and the rest. So that is one very present issue that people feel. The second one, naturally, is the economy, the fallout of the war, the rising prices of energy. And they look to opposition and say, we need you to provide a viable alternative. For some of them, they think opposition has not been very serious. It's different from what we saw during the APC. And I wonder for you, what is responsible for that? But more importantly, how are we going to put the feet of this government to the fire so these two important issues of security and economy are tackled?
Okay, so these are my thoughts. You see, opposition and holding the government to their feet to the fire is only effective if a particular government has shade. If a government feels that the people matter. Now, if the government does not feel that way, you can complain from night till day, you can show the statistics, you can go pay people, get the data that they are hiding out, put it in front of the people. And the government is still going to even be more brazen and do so much more than you have even showed that they are doing. So what really matters is for the people to be able to understand that they have an opportunity in an election to either continue to approve what the government is doing or remove them. And this brings us to a very, very important point. Now, with the new Electoral Act, they've removed the super delegates, the delegates in elections. So it is either a direct primary or consensus. Direct primary means that anybody that is registered as a member of the party can vote to determine who the candidate is. And your point when you started this question is a very brilliant point, because you're right. People don't really want to understand the mechanics by which politics operates and candidates emerge. But then when the candidate emerges, they complain about the candidate that has emerged. But now, fortuitously, you have a situation now where they can determine the candidate that emerges. So as opposition, aside holding government accountable and even just educating the people on what to expect from their government and how the government is letting them down and saying, okay, if it was in our position, we will do this and we will do this. We also are now pushing our registration. You can just go on adcregistration.ng. You register and you are a delegate. You determine who the candidate you want to represent you would emerge. That candidate. So you are now part of the process, and you have to be, because from the question previous to this, which is so many governors have decamped, the party, the whole political system is looking like a one-party state. It is going to be a situation where it is the people versus the political structure. And you, the people, should be able to determine the candidates that you are going to have face this political structure. This is why it is so important for people to get involved, to register with our party. It's adcregistration.ng. Register and have a say in who the candidate that would emerge will be. Because there's only so much we can say, okay, look at the budget, look at the padding. Most ministries are barely doing up to, I mean, you saw the Minister of Health come out to say his allocation compared to what he has received. This is going on all over all ministries. You saw the lady that came out to say that the process by which ministries should follow has not been followed. That's why monies have not been allocated. Then we see that the woman was shortly removed from that position very swiftly after that. There's so much financial impropriety budgets that have been, contracts that have been given out to self-proper tenders. We've highlighted this for the past 3 years. And the government only gets more brazen. So ultimately, it's the people that are going to have the final say. And they cannot sit back at this point and just say, okay, we just want the result. And then if they don't get the result they want, they complain. No, the parties will continue to hold the government accountable as much as they can, but must understand that opposition works when a government feels responsible to the people, has a sense of shame, and you have other institutions of government from the Senate to the House of Representatives to the law courts also holding that government accountable. But what we've seen in the Senate is that it's a rubber stamp. It's just another hand of the executive, which is not supposed to be.
So you say this government doesn't have shame? You say it's shameless?
It doesn't have shame. It's completely shameless. A president, the #1 citizen, visiting Benue and saying that he cannot go to where people were hurt, which is the main reason why he came to that state. The #1 citizen with all the resources available to him, that president does not have shame.
All right. Let's revisit another part of the problem, which you had spoken to earlier when you talked about governors defecting as spineless. But as far as the Nigerian political landscape is concerned, it would seem as if there is enough guilt to go around politicians in Nigeria, yourself inclusive. And let me read to you how the APC in Lagos reacted to your defection to the ADC. This is ascribed to the Lagos APC publicity secretary, who says, from your beginnings in the obscure COA party to your short-lived PDP romance to your opportunistic hijack of the Labour Party ticket in 2023 and now to the ADC. And I believe the House of Reps is currently considering in its second review, or if you like, third review of the amendment to the Electoral Act, something to address political nomadism. So from where you stand, it appears as if you do not have any moral high ground to criticize the governors, being a serial defector yourself.
I think that is absurd, and I'll explain why. No disrespect to you. I started in COA party. All my political years, Lagos State has been controlled by the APC. I have never once joined the ruling party because of my disdain for how they manage the resources and Commonwealth of Lagos. It is extremely expensive, extremely risky to be in opposition. I've consistently been in opposition. At the point where I joined Labour Party, the wave or whatever Labour Party became had not yet even showed a sign of that. We work towards that. So there's nothing opportunistic about going to a small party and working hard, reaching to the people, selling a bigger idea and talking about good governance and activating hope. Same thing with the COA party. And I know the kind of results, the number of people that came out in that local government election. I joined the PDP. The PDP has never produced a governor in Lagos State. So I am consistently against the bad governance of APC in Lagos. So indeed, I do have a moral ground. I do not practice the idea of if you cannot beat them, join them. It's our time to now enjoy with the winning team. No. On principle, I cannot associate myself with the APC, and I've said this consistently over the years that I've been in politics. So I think what that gentleman spoke about is just an attempt to twist a narrative. that does not really have any basis in reality.
Well, I'm wondering where the defining ideology is in those different political experiences, COA Party, PDP, Labour Party, but that's another kettle of fish entirely. We must anchor at this point.
Talk about that. I think you have a very good question. That's a very good question. You find
in
that
60 seconds, sir. 60 seconds.
Okay. So our politics has not matured to the point where people are discussing ideas that genuinely affect people because of the low performance of governance over these past couple of years. We are still talking about not stealing. We are talking about good rules. We are talking about light. We are not talking about ideologies, whether it's pro-abortion or non-abortion, whether it is state restructuring or federalism. There are no bigger ideas in our politics. So it's either I don't want to belong to the group of people that are stealing our resources, or I want to be in a new clean party that's going to push a new type of governance that will reduce these problems, these primitive problems that we're experiencing as Nigerians. And that is currently where we are. When we have a number of years of good governance that has addressed all these questions, then the bigger ideas and bigger ideals will now be the things that will separate people ideologically and will not allow, for instance, the Democrats to the Republicans.
All right. We hope that, we can achieve that outlook on our politicking in a short term rather than the long term. Mr. Rhodes-Vivour is an ADC chieftain, of course, and of course, former governorship candidate of the Labour Party. Thank you for joining us on the program, and we look forward to another engagement with you.
Thank you so much.
Kadi.
Right, let's switch gears now. And this has been an issue which continues to hog the headlines. We understand that the court is meant to rule today. But we'll take a quick break. Stay with us.